Arizona Wildlife Views, brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sportfish and Wildlife Restoration Fund.
Find bird. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Arizona Wildlife Views. I'm your host, Jim Harkin. Tonight, we're in elk country, where biologists and students are coming together to learn how to make roads safer for wildlife and motorists. This is a tale of two Arizona Game and Fish Department stories. We're combining the department's study of elk for the I-17 project with a group of homeschooled families looking for an outdoor educational experience. Let's start with the Elk Study.
We're working on the Interstate 17 research project, and the purpose of this project is to use elk to tell us where to put wildlife crossing structures similar to those on State Route 260. We have a series of wildlife underpasses that elk use to safely get under the highway over by Payson. So the idea here is to collar elk along I-17 in the areas where elk vehicle collisions are most prevalent and let the elk tell us where to put the crossing structures. We've collared in the neighborhood of 65 elk. We get 2 locations per hour, and we can go back in and look at that information to see where they're crossing at or where they're trying to cross at.
In order to get a GPS tracking collar on an elk, first you have to catch it. During the night, biologists place alfalfa as bait to lure an elk into a soft-sided cage. Then first thing in the morning, the biologists tie the animal down. This way, they can get their work done without having to drug the elk or worry about one of them getting kicked in the head. Then the GPS collar is fitted and placed on the elk. An identifying ear tag completes the process and the animal is released unharmed. The collars are designed to fall off after about 2 years, and researchers are then able to retrieve the information detailing the elk's travels.
When we get the information back in a couple of years, we'll be able to use that information to make recommendations to ADOT on where wildlife crossing structures should go, whether it be an underpass or an overpass. And they can take those recommendations and use them in whatever way they like. But our primary purpose is to provide those recommendations as well as evaluate elk movements along highways, and we're learning some real interesting things there. As traffic levels increase, elk tend not to be able to cross the highway as easily anymore.
This map shows the movements of 15 elk over a 2-year period. The black line in the center is Interstate 17. You can see that the animals approach the highway quite often, but rarely cross it. When they do try to cross the highway, often the result is not a good one.
Elk vehicle collisions are pretty serious, particularly on highways with high speeds like Interstate 17. This stretch of highway right along here where we're working has in the neighborhood of 70 elk vehicle collisions per year in about a 30-mile stretch.
Beginning in 2001, a similar study was conducted on Highway 260 east of Payson, and the results led to several wildlife-friendly underpasses being incorporated into the new highway construction. Infrared cameras placed in the underpass confirm that wildlife are using them instead of trying to cross the road above. Highways become barriers to wildlife's natural migration routes, and the more Arizona continues to grow and develop, the more those natural corridors are threatened.
Primary hope on this project, on State Route 260, we found once we put underpasses in, the ability of elk to cross the highway increased. So in the case of Interstate 17, we don't have a lot of crossings. Although we have some collisions, still quite a few collisions, it's because those elk are unsuccessful at crossing the highway. Most of the elk that try and cross turn around and leave according to the data we've collected. So once we put these underpasses in the future, then the ability of elk to safely cross the highway should increase, and they should be able to make their seasonal and daily movements much easier.
The I-17 project should wrap up around 2010, giving the Game and Fish Department and the Department of Transportation plenty of good data to decide where to build underpasses or overpasses along this stretch of highway that will accommodate wildlife. So what does any of this have to do with homeschooled children and their families? It's part of an education program called Nature's Classroom.
Well, Nature's Classroom started last March, and it's basically, this is one of those examples where we bring homeschool families out into the wild with a biologist to see kind of what they do and to experience nature firsthand.
So, since the biologists were studying elk movements anyway, it seemed like a perfect opportunity to get students out into the field.
It gets them out of their homes and out into nature to gain a greater appreciation for that. We've done probably 10 of these events now that have ranged from crayfish eradications to bald eagle banding to the elk viewing, bird watching, all kinds of different, it spans a spectrum.
Once the biologists have subdued the elk, the students and their families were allowed to come down for a closer look at the collaring process.
It was very interesting getting to see the elk up close. And being able to look at the characteristics of the elk, how the elk reacted and how they did it, how it totally calmed down after they hooded it, and the technique and everything. It was very interesting, yes.
Also, the desire to connect with something wild was very evident when the youngsters were allowed to touch the elk.
I thought it would have been softer. It was more rough than soft. It was really cool to actually be able to pet a live elk.
The Arizona Game and Fish Department and the Arizona Science Center teamed up to create Nature's Classroom in 2007. And so far, it has hosted about a dozen events for more than 300 homeschoolers.
Oh, there's been more demand than we can fill. There were probably 200 people that wanted to participate in this event, and we're probably only going to be able to accommodate about 70. There's so much demand that we just can't fill, and we really need some support from the people, maybe additional funding, or just to come out and voice that they want to see more programs like this.
Last spring, Nature's Classroom led 25 students and their families up a steep hike to watch biologists banding baby bald eagles. Being that close to our national symbol was an experience some will never forget.
And then actually being able to see the baby eagles, I learned a lot because I came from Minnesota, so I thought I knew a lot about bald eagles, but I learned a lot more. So I found out how much I really didn't know. But they're really adorable, and the adult ones are really beautiful, and I'm glad I was able to come and do this.
There's a couple reasons why this is important. The first one would be, one, these kids get to get out there and see what these biologists do, and so it's a recruitment tool allowing us to maybe start developing the future wildlife managers or the wildlife biologists that might come around in the next few generations. And also, it just shows them, it gives a positive outlook on what we as a department are doing, so it allows us to get a better face in front of the public and to see some of this really cool research that we're doing to help wildlife and people.
We had a homeschool group here, and they were real interested in seeing what was going on with this project and wanting to touch the elk and see the elk, and a lot of excited kids wanted to see what was going on. It's really interesting to try and work with more people around, but we wanted everything to go well, and things went real well today, and nobody got hurt, no animals got hurt, and they seemed pretty excited about it.
As much as the students enjoyed touching the elk, they all understood that it was a wild animal. So their favorite part of the event was when it was released.
I liked when they let them loose. I thought it was cool when they ran back to the wild.
It was really awesome. It's so interesting the way they actually tie it down, and then when they let it go, it just runs straight off into the woods.
It's something that you need to learn at a young age. If you get opportunities to do this kind of thing, come out and handle animals or go hunting, it really leads to a lot bigger things in your future. You want to spend time in the woods and spend time with the wildlife, and I think this really got their interest started on this kind of work and outdoors and wildlife.
The Nature's Classroom program continues to redefine success and surmount small hills and big challenges as it brings meaningful outdoor experience to families in Arizona. And after the students have returned to their home classrooms, the biologists of the Arizona Game and Fish Department will continue their research to make our highway safer for both humans and wildlife. From elk country to lowland marshes, volunteers are helping preserve natural resources in Arizona. In our next story, we'll show you why wetlands are so important to our environment. The natural beauty and diversity of animal and plant life found in wetlands makes them magnets for life. Here in Arizona, one of the rarest type of wetlands is the marsh. Marshes are tracts of low, wet, soft land that is temporarily or permanently covered with water and usually characterized by aquatic grass-like vegetation. When runoff from rains and snowmelt is high, marshes absorb excess water until it gradually drains away. In drier periods, they hold moisture even after open bodies of water have disappeared. Marshes help cleanse the environment by mixing nutrients and oxygen into the water and by filtering out and neutralizing sewage and toxins. For wildlife, marshes provide nutrient-rich food, a thirst-quenching sip of water, and a resting place. But for as rich and divergent as these natural places are, the true value of a wetland goes beyond natural happenings. How much value does one place on the sheer beauty of a wetland? What is the value of a sound of a flock of mallards in the early morning, or the excitement of watching a deer with their fawn around the water's edge? Can the blare of rush hour traffic replace the sweet trill of a common yellowthroat? To a growing army of thousands, the answer is a resounding no. More and more of these conservation warriors are putting on their gloves, donning floppy hats, and using sweat power to assure wetlands such as marshes will be passed down to future generations. Armed with little more than sunscreen, shovels, and a desire to help, volunteers set out to create a marsh at Powers Butte, southwest of Phoenix. Owned and operated by the Arizona Game and Fish Department, Powers Butte Wildlife Area is situated near the Gila River. Here, wildlife is king.
In the desert, you add water and they will come, and around here we're doing exactly that.
The task at hand, convert these 2 acres into a marsh. To do that, sedges will be planted, water applied, and in short order, the wildlife will flock in. Phil Smith, Wildlife Area Manager, talks about the types of wildlife he expects to attract here.
Ducks, waterfowl, wading birds, large game, small wildlife, they all love marshes. So this whole sedge that we're putting in is going to be supportive of pretty much all the wildlife that you can find out here.
The first step is to mark the field in 10-foot grids. A pre-marked line is stretched across the edges of the field. Another pre-marked line is moved across the field. As the line is moved, volunteers place flags every 10 feet. Once the flags are placed, the digging begins.
You sink your shovel right in at the flag, and it's just 1 shovel's depth. Pull the soil right off to the side. Don't throw it away or anything.
While the digging is going on, the sedges need to be separated.
Basically, what we're looking for is a root ball, a bunch of plant material with some roots. We don't have to have a lot of dirt on it, but we'd like to get these roots in there. This could be a transplant right there. We're not looking for a great big handful or a big amount. We have planted down to just 1 stem even, and they've done real well. So there's a transplant. We've got lots of those. So what we need is somebody pulling off of this in these clumps like this, and we want to fill the buckets up, and then the buckets go out to start getting planted.
Working the land is a hot, dusty job. But as they say, someone's got to do it. Today's volunteers are from the Arizona Game and Fish Department's Employees Association.
Most of our project completion is done through volunteers, Boy Scouts, Eagle Scout projects, community service groups, sportsmen's organizations, and many of them just with families that come out and want to spend some time and make things happen out here.
These sedges were previously collected from Arlington Ponds, another game and fish property just down the street from Powers. With the 2 acres being planted today, Phil will have 6 acres completed with the capacity of another 10 acres. In addition to these marshes, the master plan calls for cottonwood willow components and a mesquite bosque.
We've got a lot of cottonwoods, some willows that are going to be brought in, transplanted around the pond in these marsh areas, and then a lot of mesquite that we need. We have seeds and mesquite trees we'll be bringing in and transplanting all that in the mesquite bosque area. So there's, like I say, about 10 mini projects to get all this accomplished available for somebody who's interested.
Once the planting is complete, Phil opens the floodgate and the water begins its job. Overnight, these 2 acres will fill, and soon we'll have a full-blown marsh to enjoy. You may be surprised to see marshes in the state of Arizona, but they are a vital part of our ecosystem. So are the open grasslands of northern Arizona. They're a great place to visit and look for wildlife. Today, the Wildlife Viewing Guide points us north and a little bit east to the Raymond Ranch Wildlife Area. This unique property is tucked away in the pinyon juniper forest and grasslands of Anderson Mesa, in the distant shadow of the San Francisco Peaks.
The department purchased the Raymond Wildlife Area back in the early 1940s. They have made some subsequent land acquisitions, and currently it sits at about 9,000 private acres and about 6,000 state trust lease land, giving us a total of about 15,000 acres, which is 24 square miles that we actually maintain control over here. It was purchased primarily, at the time of the purchase, it was done for antelope winter range, and then the management was expanded about 5 years after they had the property to include buffalo that came down out of House Rock Valley.
That's right, buffalo. If you are going to go in search of wildlife to view, you might as well aim big. Buffalo are the largest mammal native to North America. They stand over 5 feet tall and weigh about a ton.
They're a relic from the last ice age, and they don't really like the heat. They grow a big woolly coat for the winter time, and now any structure, anything that you put up, fence post, water tank, doesn't matter what, they're going to rub on it and rub it to death, getting that hair back off of them so they can cool back off.
The herd here at Raymond Ranch is currently about 45 animals, and they still have the ability to surprise ranch manager Alan Zufelt every once in a while.
The biggest thing I've learned about buffalo since I've been here is that they definitely have a mind of their own, and they're very unpredictable. That you see them and you think they're just a docile, hairy cow, and the next thing you know, they pull some fast one on you, and you're completely overwhelmed by them. And actually, that's one of the biggest problems that we have with them is their desire to roam. And a fence is just a suggestion to a buffalo. It doesn't matter how good the fence is. They're gonna go. If they wanna go, they're gonna go. And much to the dismay of our neighbors sometimes, but they're pretty good about helping us out, letting us know when they're out, and sometimes bringing them back for us. Herding them back can be definitely a challenge.
With the edge of Meteor Crater in the distance, the herd roams the ranch freely year-round. Over the years, the herd has been reduced in size to make it more manageable.
We've cut this herd down in size in order to eliminate some of the contention between us and the neighbors when they do get out, causing less damage when they are out. We manage this herd at this time trying to maintain between 40 and 60 animals, and of which we have today 7 bulls, 3 of which are adult bulls, and 22 cows, and the rest are yearlings and calves. We have a total of 45 animals today, and we're just about to get to our calving season, and we're hoping to have 15 to 20 calves maybe this fall.
Even though the buffalo herd is the most popular attraction on the ranch, there are plenty of opportunities to see other wildlife in the area.
Many times the other wildlife is actually easier to find, easier to see than the buffalo. Quite frequently you're going to see pronghorn antelope on the way here, on the way or on the property here itself, coyotes, a vast myriad of grassland birds. During the wintertime, we have between 300 and 500 elk that make use of the wildlife area. There are some mule deer out here, but they're a lesser number. We're kind of on the fringe of their winter range, and so we don't see those as many as some of the other things. The best suggestion I would have for folks wanting to come out and visit the area would be to do a little research, get on the website, at the Game and Fish website, get some of the information. If at all they have an opportunity or possibility to bring a vehicle with some clearance, you know, a truck or a Suburban, something like that. A little passenger car will get you as far as the headquarters, but it won't get you to any of the other back roads where you're more likely to see things. You're going to have a diminished opportunity if you have just a passenger car. That's not to say that it's not possible. It's just, you know, you're just limited. And then if we're here, feel free to knock on the door and ask, and we'll point directions as to what and where, and at least to the best of our knowledge. So,
if you are in a vehicle or on an ATV, you need to stay on the designated roads. The ranch is also a favorite for hikers and horseback riders who want to get a feel for the open spaces that used to dominate this part of the state. Raymond Ranch Wildlife Area is located about 30 miles east of Flagstaff and seemingly about 100 years back in time.
People come out here and hike, and we do have a hiking trail, the Jaeger Canyon Trail. We put with the help of the state parks. We've just constructed this trail. People can hike that, but this is public land, and you can hike around wherever you'd like to. Horseback riding is encouraged, and they can go anywhere they'd like. Hunting is legal and does occur year-round on legal species. So usually that's in the elk season in the fall that we usually have a lot of hunters, or whenever we're needing to manage the buffalo herd, we'll have a hunt in the spring or the fall. Adding to what people can expect out here, there's a parking area with a barbecue, and for some of the year there is a fire restriction, but most of the year that you can use the barbecue, picnic tables. There is a public restroom at the headquarters. It is Arizona, so make sure you bring enough water. You know, plan to enjoy a good day. It's a little bit of a drive out here, and it's nice. It's nice and quiet, and for the most part you're out of cell phone service, so it's sort of a blast to the past.
Tonight, in our continuing series on sporting dogs, we introduce you to a breed that is sometimes referred to as the gray ghost.
The breed is Weimaraner. The breed is from Germany. Back in the 1800s, early 1800s, they believe is the origination, although it may go back longer than that. I know that the breed has a mixture of various other breeds in it, including Bloodhound and German Shorthair Pointer. They're a sporting dog. The original intent of the German breeders was to protect the game preserves that the barons held, and protect the animals from being poached by the peasants. So they were a great protector of home and land. They also hunted big game as well as upland game. Here in America, the Weimaraner is used primarily for upland game birds. They are a pointer retriever. They're very strong-willed, The breed itself is a very needy dog. They crave human companionship. They can have separation anxiety. So it's important to learn socialization skills. Crate training is critical for the breed. It's a very busy dog, and it's definitely not the right dog for people that are pretty sedentary. They need a lot of activity, a lot of running, exercise. Here, I've got some here. I'll keep you busy. But they are a very dedicated breed. They become a part of the family, and great companion. If they're brought in as puppies, they're great for protecting the young ones.
And that's our show for this evening. If you have questions about anything you saw on the show, go to our website at azgfd.gov. On behalf of producers Carol Lind and Gary Schaefer, I'm your host, Jim Harkin. We'll see you next time.